An animal rights group is taking the Department of Agriculture to court for failing to take action against a live export company based in Perth. A group called Animals Angels claims the International Livestock Exports altered a veterinarian's report about deaths on board a voyage to Singapore in 2008. The Australian Quarantine Inspection Service conducted an investigation into the allegations, but no action was taken against the company. Now the ship's veterinarian says the live export industry is pressuring vets to underreport animal deaths at sea. John Stewart reports.
In 2008, Lloyd Reeve Johnson boarded the Hereford Express on a 9-day journey to Singapore. As the ship's vet, his job was to take care of 6,000 sheep, 500 cattle and 350 goats. Once the ship arrived, Lloyd Reeve Johnson produced an end-of-voyage report detailing the number of animal deaths on the journey. The vet sent his report to the Australian Quarantine Inspection Service, known as AQUIS. But a second report was also sent to AQUIS, which appeared to come from him.
I was exceedingly annoyed because it didn't have the data that I had put in, and I would have been quite happy had AQUIS or somebody else phoned up and said, let's discuss the data in your report, but I wasn't happy that somebody had changed my report without actually discussing it with me.
Now, animal rights lawyer Dr. Malcolm Caulfield is taking the Department of Agriculture to the federal court for failing to take action against the Perth-based company International Livestock Exports. He claims the company altered the vet's report to play down the number of animal deaths on the ship.
And then the other report which has appeared seems to be a report which is clearly based on the vet's report, but which is produced by the exporter with some serious editing, and which carries the vet's header on his notepaper, his footer and his electronic signature.
Lloyd Reeve Johnson's report stated that 3 cattle, 40 sheep and 18 goats died on the journey from Fremantle to Singapore. The report produced by the company stated the same number of cattle and sheep deaths, but reduced the goat deaths to 11. It's a relatively small difference, but Lloyd Reeve Johnson complained to AQUIS and the Department of Agriculture. The altered report was investigated, but the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions found there was insufficient evidence to pursue the case. The Department of Agriculture released a statement saying,
"The Department has already investigated the issue raised regarding 2 end-of-voyage reports being submitted. This was referred to the Department's Investigation and Enforcement Branch in 2009. The investigation concluded that no further action should be taken."
International Livestock Exports also released a statement asserting there was a dispute over how many animals had actually died.
This was investigated by AQUIS and his numbers were incorrect. After tracing all numbers back to the consignee discharge records, the vessel mortality loaded numbers receival into feedlot. Ear tags of all mortalities on board were made available from the master. The mortality was still above the reportable level on our report.
In the federal court this week, Animal Angels will claim that the Department of Agriculture failed to enforce Australian laws regarding the export of live animals during the 2008 voyage to Singapore.
What's emerged from all of this is that not only did the department do nothing in terms of taking the exporter to task or seeking to enforce the law, they didn't even investigate properly the facts that were under their noses.
Vets on board live export ships are paid by Australian export companies, not by the government. Lloyd Reeve Johnson says that veterinarians are placed under pressure to play down the number of deaths at sea because they are paid by the live export industry.
This is one of my biggest worries about this industry is the lack of transparency and the lack of governance, where effectively you have the inspector, the AQUIS approved veterinarian, who is chosen by the exporter, the person they're inspecting, paid by that person and not re-engaged if they don't report favourably. So I think on any level of reasonable governance you could say that that puts people in a conflict of interest.
Lloyd Reeve Johnson wants the Australian government to pay vets on live export ships to guarantee their independence. International Livestock Exports released a statement saying,
"Yes, vets and stockmen are paid by the exporter. We have no objection if the government wants to pay for them. There is no such pressure on the vets.
Lloyd Reeve Johnson believes the live export industry has banned him from working on ships because he became a whistleblower.
I'm still listed as an AQUIS-approved veterinarian, and it's certainly something I would do again. I think the interesting thing is just what I said with this transparency, is it seems to me that once you make a critical comment, you get blackballed by the industry and they don't invite you back. Now, the bizarre thing is you're meant to be working for AQUIS as a reporter, and to me it seems that if an inspector finds something which is adverse, those should be the people you're sending back to say, has it improved? But that just hasn't happened.
Earlier this year, the Federal Agriculture Department recommended action be taken against International Livestock Exports after Indonesian abattoir workers were filmed mistreating Australian cattle. John Stewart, Lateline.
And you can read the full statements from the Live Export Company and the Department of Agriculture on the Lateline website.